Hey guys, what's good? Triple J Boxing here, and we got a good topic today. We got Jaron Boots Ennis versus Terence Bud Crawford. Great fight. Would love to see the fight. Jaron Ennis calling Crawford out, calling everyone out like you should. A young, hungry champion. He's only 26, or not champion. Technically, he's got the interim IBF, but he hasn't really won a belt from. Yeah, he hasn't won a belt. Let's be honest here, but he's a young, hungry boxer in his prime. Obviously, calling out everybody, you're gonna do it, especially when you're younger, because you're trying to build yourself up, and boxers like Terence Crawford are already established, right? So he's not going to call out Boots Ennis, really. But how do I see this fight going if it gets made? Boots, obviously, very talked about a lot, hyped up a lot. Really, is he overrated? Resume-wise, yeah, I would say he's overrated. The way they talk about him. It's kind of the same way they talked about Terence Crawford, to be fair. I thought the reason why I didn't like Terence Crawford at the beginning is because they were overhyping him and overrating him when he didn't really beat anybody. I remember they were calling Terence Crawford #1 pound for pound after he beat Victor Postal and unified all the belts at 140. They're calling him the best guy in boxing, a lot of people. And I just didn't agree with it because the 140 division, like who Terence Crawford beat there, sure, they were good guys, but they weren't anything like special, right? Like what he did at welterweight was special. That's what made me a believer in Terence Crawford. Like Sean Porter win, Kell Brook, Errol Spence, Kavalaskis, who else? All those guys that he's beating at welterweight it's impressive. And he was knocking them out too. So that's when I became a believer. But at this point in his career, Boots Ennis is at the stage of Terence Crawford back in the day. Actually, I would say he's even more overrated than Terence Crawford. At least Terence Crawford, he unified 140 before they really started hyping him up. Jaron Boots Ennis hasn't won a belt. And he hasn't really beaten any really great fighters yet. Though he's still young, I get it. It's just, what will he do against Terence Crawford? And I'll tell you what will happen. This is my opinion on it. Now, I don't mind Jaron Boots Ennis calling out Terence Crawford. He should. He's a fighter. He should want the fight. Now, for his team, maybe his team, that wouldn't be smart. But I think for him, of course, he wants to face the best and he wants to prove that he's better than Crawford. Because Crawford's getting up there and he might leave the sport soon, so he'll want to crack at him. But his team might think otherwise of putting him in with Crawford. Because in my opinion, I think Jaron Ennis is I think he's just too young. He's too green. And I know he's 26, so he's not super young. But I think he's 2 or 3 fights away from a Crawford to be ready for a Crawford, in my opinion. And like I said, I'm not saying if he got the Crawford fight next, I think, yeah, it would be a good fight. And I don't think it would be like I would want to see it, right? And I still believe he would have a chance, like any other fighter would, even more so than the average fighter. But I just feel like in 2 to 3 fights from now, he would be fully ready for Crawford, and he would have his best chance at beating Crawford. And Crawford would be a bit older too, so that would work for him as well. But I feel like this point in time, now that I think about it, Crawford is getting up there, so you want to make this fight probably as soon as possible. because who knows, right, how long Crawford will be in the sport and on top, right? We don't know. He does take care of himself. He lives the life of boxing, and he's a natural. Terence Crawford's just a natural fighter. His instincts, everything. You can't really. There's only so much you can do to train a fighter to be good. It's just innately, he's just a great athlete too. Like he's an all-around mentality, physical, athletically, skill-wise. You could take away the skill-wise out of him, and Terence Crawford would still be a beast in the ring without the skills he's got. I mean, that's he's a natural-born fighter. Yeah, guys. Yeah, so I don't mind him calling out Terence Crawford. He is 26. He is getting up there. Terence Crawford is getting up there, and he's 26 isn't super young, so I can't hate on him for that. Obviously, Terence Crawford would have a lot more to lose and a lot less to gain, but I feel like Boots is definitely deserving of a shot at Crawford, I would say. At welterweight, definitely. There's not many guys out there you could put ahead of him to get a shot at Crawford. So if Crawford's going to stay at 147, he's definitely got to fight Boots Ennis in the next year or two, in my opinion. But my problem with this situation is the fans, how they think that Boots Ennis is going to like easily beat Crawford or destroy Crawford, and Crawford's afraid of him. He doesn't want that smoke. That's just nuts to me. Like, that's obviously not the case. I just don't see how Boots Ennis could be the favorite going into... Obviously, he's not the favorite, but how someone could just bluntly and blatantly say that he's going to easily beat Crawford and he's going to knock out Crawford. I don't know what facts they're using there. Maybe they're Crawford haters. Yeah, because like the way I look at this fight is, if Terence Crawford, obviously he has less to gain from fighting a Jaron Boots Ennis, and I get it, and he won't probably make that much money because a lot of, let's be honest here, guys. How many casual boxing fans or casual sports fans know Jaron Boots Ennis? They may be heard as... He's got that nickname Boots, so you might have heard of him. But let's be honest, it's not going to sell that great, I don't think. So the payday is not going to be substantial for Crawford. But the other argument I have here, though, the true boxing... The way the sport should be run... The best versus the best. I do believe if Crawford stays at 147, he has to fight Boots Ennis in the next year or two. I do agree with that. Whether the money's there or not, he's got to fight him. But if you're looking at it business-wise, obviously Crawford has not much to gain from this fight compared to, like, say he moves up and fights someone at 154, like a Charlo or a Tim Tszyu. He'll make more money doing that. You know what I mean? Errol Spence rematch make more money. A lot of fights... will make him way more money. A Canelo fight, right? For Jaron Ennis, it's like the sky's the limit for him. It's like he's gonna keep on getting better, and obviously it's a win-win for him. Well, technically, in the way boxing fans are, it's technically not a win-win for him, because I know obviously he has a lot to gain from this, but the way boxing fans are, if he loses this fight, like, say, the way Ryan Garcia lost against Tank Davis, even though I didn't think Ryan Garcia quit, there was a rehydration clause, he was severely dehydrated, and Tank he's a knockout puncher. Tank does that to most of his opponents. Tank is arguably the best guy in the division. So it's the same situation here. Besides the rehydration clause, so it'll be a bit better for Jaron. But what I'm saying is, if Crawford knocks him out, he will definitely, a lot of fans will be on him like they were on Ryan, you know what I mean? And they'll be like, depending on how he gets stopped, they're going to be shitting on Jaron Boots Ennis. So in that sense, it is kind of it's not a win-win, because there will be some fans and a lot of haters out there that will be saying, oh, look, he's trash now. But if he does remotely good and it goes to decision, or let's just say he does all right, I think it is a win-win. Obviously, if he beats Crawford, he becomes the number one guy pretty much in the division. So yeah, I do like this though. I like if he does get the Crawford fight. I do like that. I'm more for you can't hate on a guy for challenging the best guy and losing. Like I just don't get it why people hate on Ryan for that, for challenging Tank, arguably the best guy. It is what it is though, guys. Now, in my opinion, do I think Ryan should have took that fight with the rehydration clause? No. Do I think he should have took that fight in general, even without a rehydration clause? I would say no, because I feel like Ryan is in the same boat as Jaron Boots Ennis, where he's still green and he's still learning and he's still really young, whereas Tank's in his prime. He's probably not going to get any better, I don't think. Tank's like I think he's like 30, 29 years old, right? So he's in his prime. Couple more years experience ahead of a Devin and a Ryan and a Shakur. In this situation, Terence Crawford has a lot more experience. He's older than Tank, but that could be in the advantage of Jaron since Terence is getting up there. So in that sense, you never know when Terence Crawford's going to grow old overnight, whereas Tank's in his prime, right? He wasn't super old, but there is similarities here in the sense that Jaron Boots Ennis will be challenging the best guy at welterweight. And, I mean, if he beats him, he becomes the guy. But if he doesn't, then people are going to shit on him, obviously, depending on how he loses. But if he does remotely good, it will still be good for him. But I believe that he needs two to three more fights before he's ready for Terence Crawford. Because I got Terence Crawford knocking him out, probably. Stopping him later in the fight, though. I think if Jaron Boots Ennis can last the whole fight in the decision, that would be a huge win, I feel like, for him. Depending, unless he got totally demolished. Obviously, that would be bad, even if he lasted the 12 rounds. And he just didn't have this, because people would be looking at him like, wow, he lost a lot of rounds. You go like that wouldn't be good either. But I'm saying if he puts in a decent performance and he lasts 12 rounds, that would be good. That would be good for him. But at this point, I think if they were to fight next, Terence Crawford would probably knock him out. I just see it that way. And it's not that I don't think Jaron Boots Ennis is good. I just think Terence Crawford is just something else. And he's on the longest knockout streak in boxing, isn't he? One of them anyway, in the welterweight division. It will be interesting to see, because this is a huge step up for Jaron Ennis if he were to fight Crawford next. Like I said, it would be similar to the Ryan Garcia versus Tank. It was a huge step up. The best opponent that Ryan Garcia fought was Luke Campbell up to that point. Obviously he beat other names too, like Fortuna, but Fonseca and all that. But the best game opponent with the best credentials was a Luke Campbell, and then he went right to Tank. Tank is levels above that, so it will be similar to that situation, and it'll be similar to. I'm going to bring up another thing. It'll be similar to Canelo versus Mayweather. Back in 2012 it happened, didn't it? That was a long time ago, over 12 years ago. That's crazy. And I remember Canelo was 22 or 23 at the time when he fought Mayweather, and Mayweather was 35 or so. I don't know. He was mid-30s, and a lot of people would look at that and be like, "Wow, Mayweather, he's old, so he would have the advantage. He would have a disadvantage." But it was actually the opposite in this case, because Mayweather was still. His longevity was pretty good, so he was still relatively in his prime. Obviously, he wasn't in his prime anymore, but he was still enough in his prime, I would say, at that tail end of his prime, because he had such a huge experience edge over the fighters too, and he takes care of his body. Mayweather, he doesn't really drink or smoke, so obviously him at 35 is better than, like, he was a fresh 35, I would say, right? Because he took care of his body and his experience was levels above Canelo, and that's why on paper you would think, oh, 22 years old. If a regular casual sports fan would look at that, they'd be like, oh wow, Canelo's got the edge. He's 22. Mayweather's whatever, 35. I could be wrong about their ages. It was around there, how old they were. But in this case, if you knew Mayweather and if you knew the sport of boxing, you would know Canelo was too green going into that fight. Being 22, 23, that is too early to be going into a top-level Mayweather fight. And it showed. Mayweather put on one of his best performances. He pretty much won every round. I'm pretty sure he won every round almost. And he put on a clinic. Like, it was actually one of Mayweather's more impressive performances because he actually sat down in the pocket and he actually landed a lot of shots on Canelo. Pretty much embarrassed Canelo. I felt bad for Canelo at one point. His head was snapping back so much from the jab and stuff. And Mayweather was standing his ground in that fight because he was just so much experience he had over Canelo. Canelo couldn't do anything. But so it's similar to the Ryan Garcia versus Tank Davis, and it's similar to the Canelo versus Mayweather. If this fight were to happen, Jaron Ennis versus Terence Crawford. Similarities there. Obviously different styles. Nothing's completely the same, but those are my two examples. But you got to think here. The one thing that's different between the Canelo and Mayweather fight is Mayweather will just outpoint you and outbox you. Terence Crawford will knock you out. So that's the only difference I would say there is Jaron Boots Ennis could get knocked out by Terence Crawford. He won't just get outboxed. He might just get knocked out as well. So that's the way I see it playing out, guys. Terence Crawford just levels above Jaron Ennis at this point in time. But 2 to 3 fights from now, he might be ready. He still might not be ready. Who knows? But Crawford is getting old, so he probably will be ready, I would assume. But you never know. Crawford might be that kind of freak like Bernard Hopkins. Who knows? But let's look at the resume here, guys. Who has Jaron Boots Ennis beat? Nothing. If you're a casual fan, you don't know these guys. His last fight, Roman Villa. Who really knows him? Karen Kukazazian. No one really knows him. You know what I mean? Castillo Clayton. Like, these guys got good records, don't get me wrong. Padded records. Good, and they're not terrible fighters. Like, obviously they're not. But his most well-known victories are his Thomas Delorme and Sergey Lepinets. Juan Carlos Abregu, he's a known fighter. So those are his top 3 guys that he's beaten, like name-wise, accomplishment-wise. The Chris Van Herden fight, we all know that got stopped, accidental headbutt. But Abregu, Lipinets, and Thomas Delorme is his top 3 guys that he's beaten. So really, it would be a tremendous step up if he were to fight Terence Crawford. Does he still have a chance? Obviously, he's got a chance. He's very talented, he's young, and he's in his prime. Experience-wise, though, he's definitely at a huge, huge disadvantage. And Crawford's still relatively in his prime. I know he's at the tail end, but still, that performance against Errol Spence was beautiful. And Errol Spence is younger than Terence Crawford, so in my opinion, guys, Jaron Boots Ennis, he's 2 to 3 fights away from being ready for Crawford, but I'm not saying he's not deserving of it right now, but his best chances of beating Crawford will be 2 to 3 fights from now, not right now. Though he does have a chance. It's just that experience is so in favor of Terence Crawford. Like, Jaron Boots Ennis has faced no one near Terence Crawford level. In my opinion, I would like to see Jaron Boots Ennis fight Amantis Stionius. That fight was supposed to happen. I forget what happened. It fell out for some kind of reasons. I forget what it was, or it might have been Stionius got an illness. He got a ruptured appendix, I think, or something. I don't know if that was the reason why that fight didn't happen, or if it was a different reason, because it's been a couple of years now. It's been a while now. But anyway, that fight didn't happen. But I'd like to them to revisit that fight. I want to see Jaron Ennis versus Amantis Sionis. Jaron Ennis versus Connor Ben. That's another good fight. Jaron Ennis versus Mario Barrios. Those would probably be the top guys I'd like to see him fight. Obviously, you got Igis Kagalafskis still there. Ugas is still there. Adrian Broner is still there. Alexis Rochas. Giovanni Saltani. There's decent names there that he can build on. So I feel like he needs to fight one of those guys, you know what I mean? And then we can kind of go from there. Even Keith Thurman, throw him in there. Even Errol Spence, he might be ready for Spence. But I would still favor Spence, actually, to be honest, at this point. But obviously, him being knocked out to Terence Crawford, you would maybe start to think, how much does Errol Spence have left? Is he damaged with all the stuff that's happened to him? The car accidents, the torn retinas in his eye, the beating that Terence Crawford put on him. Maybe he's right for the picking for Jaron Ennis. But I would still favor Errol Spence. But against these other guys like Connor Ben, Mario Barrios, Giovanni Talin, Igis Kavalaskis, Amantis Sionis, Alexis Rochas, Udonis Ugas. These are all good fights and winnable fights for him that he could build on. So 2 or 3 of those fights and then fight a Terence Crawford. That's what I feel like. Or even an Errol Spence after that, right? But yeah, guys, that's my opinion on it. I would say he's more ready for a Spence than he is for a Crawford if he was going to fight one of those guys next. But that's who I want to see him fight next. Mantis Sionis or a Connor Ben type level fighter. For Terence Crawford, sky's the limit. He can fight Canelo. He can fight Tim Tszyu. He can fight Fedora. Errol Spence rematch. He has all the cards in his favor. He's knocked out how many people now in a row? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 knockouts in a row for Terence Crawford. And his resume is incredible. Look at Errol Spence, he knocked out. Sean Porter, he knocked out. Kell Brook, he knocked out. Igis Kafalauskas, he knocked out. Amir Khan, he knocked out. Jose Benavidez Jr., he knocked out. Jeff Horn, he knocked out. Like, come on, guys. Do I need to say any more? If you go down to 140, he knocked out a lot of those guys. Like, his resume is... And he beat Delorme, too, even way before Boots Ennis did. And that's Boots Ennis' best guy on his resume, Thomas Delorme. He knocked him in 2015. So, yeah, guys. Is he ready for Terence Crawford? Probably not. But he deserves it. And if he wants to fight a mess, and if it happens, I believe he still has a chance. But give him 2 to 3 more fights before he's completely 100% ready, I would say. And we'll see how he does, right? We don't know if he can beat a Mantis Sionis or a Connor Ben. We don't know. Like, maybe we'd favor him, but we don't know, right? Let's see him how he does there. But yeah, that's my thoughts on it, guys. I don't think he can beat Terence Crawford at this moment in time. Give it 2 or 3 more fights. But does he deserve the fight? Yeah, he's a top guy. So I wouldn't hate on him like if he got the fight next, but yeah, guys, because a lot of these other guys, they're pretty much on his level. Like, other than like when you look at the welterweight division, like how many more people are more deserving of a Terence Crawford fight than Boots Ennis? There's not many, right? Like, obviously, yeah, Mario Barrios, he beat Ugas, so that could be, maybe you would favor Mario Barrios be more, on paper, more deserving of a Terence Crawford fight, right? Connor Ben knocked out Chris Algieri pretty good. A lot of good wins there. So, yeah, but he's among the top that deserve it, I would say. But, in my opinion, Terence Crawford will win by knockout at this point in time. 3 fights from now, that might be a different story, though. It might be a really highly competitive fight. But we'll see, guys. It's Triple J Boxing. Let me know what you think about it. Thanks for watching.